Sega Genesis Mini, a brand new system coming out.
Again?
One more time.
Hot take.
Well, everybody, welcome. This is going to be a little bit different because we're doing this live.
Yeah, so anything can happen. Like an intro can go wrong. Who knows?
I said the wrong thing. That's what I did. But it still happened anyway. So yeah, we're pretty excited about this because we just saw that a brand new, well, kind of brand new Sega Genesis. It's kind of a brand new thing. So the Sega Genesis Mini we heard about a bunch of times before, but now this is the very first time that Sega is officially going, there's kind of a date maybe sometime, possibly.
Yeah, so we had first heard that they were interested in making the Mini at Sega Fest 2018, and then they were like, oh, and there are connections to AtGames, and then everyone was like, boo! And then they took the Mini console, ran into the back behind the curtain, and then they were like, no, we're going to fix this. We're going to make this work. Sega Fest 2019 is happening, and they announced that in September they're going to be releasing a Mini system.
That's right.
And there are some exciting things to talk about with this Mini system.
Now, look, folks, I'm a big Sega fan. So is Adam, kind of Atari right now. But this Sega Genesis Mini is supposed to be what Nintendo did, okay? Nintendo really kind of, I want to say, invented the classic system concept, right? We really didn't have anybody doing that before them.
Well, okay, they made it.
That's a lie.
They made the classic system something that you had to look out for. They made it. Nintendo basically made it like the thing to buy at Christmas.
Yes.
The thing that everyone needed to get. So after that, everyone was jumping on the classic or mini console bandwagon, right?
And Sega has been kind of slow to get there. A lot of other companies, including Sony, released their own classic system, and that happened. But we are to understand that the Sega Genesis is being made with love and passion and determination because AtGames isn't involved.
That's right. So who is involved is really important because M2 is involved. If you're not familiar with M2, they have been taking games and bringing them to modern consoles.
Oh, yeah.
And they've been given a lot of love to titles. I have the 3DS collection that M2 made, and I just love it with the 3D integration. They seem to take titles, and they don't put too much of a spin on it, but they do tend to incorporate other things that can make the experience a little bit better. They recently did, they're responsible for the Sega Ages releases. They recently did a version of Phantasy Star that did some little tweaks with maps and stuff, and it's stuff that you can customize and turn off.
So are you telling me that Sega went out of their way and found someone that knew what they were doing?
It sounds like it, Shane.
Good! That's important. That's really important, folks, because look, these Sega Genesis games are some of the most important video games to have ever been released in the 1990s and even late 80s.
That's right.
So the idea that any company could take it and mess it up is not good. So we know M2 is behind it.
Yep.
We know Sega's serious because they hired M2.
Yes.
And now, what are the games that are going to be coming out on it?
Okay, so we heard a few things. Before we dive into the list, I do want to say that Yuzo Koshiro is another big name that's behind this. He's going to be doing some of the music for the system itself.
Streets of Rage.
Streets of Rage. He's worked on a plethora of Sega games.
Sure, but Streets of Rage.
Including the 8-bit versions of Sonic.
Absolutely, but see,
cool.
Streets of Rage, can't stress that enough.
Okay, you want to talk about the games that are going to be on the system?
I think it's like Bridge Zone on Sonic the Hedgehog on the Game Gear was really good. Yeah, that's a good one. But anyway.
So, there's going to be 40 titles coming to this mini console. We know only 10 of them for North America, and actually 10 for the Japanese version as well. The games are not going to be the same on each region of systems, which isn't unfamiliar to folks that have been looking into classic or mini systems.
If you're really interested, you got to go across the pond to get another one.
Yeah, so the North American release, we have Altered Beast, Castlevania. This is a big one. Castlevania Bloodlines, or the New Generation, depending on what region you're from. Castlevania Bloodlines is not a game that has seen many ports. And it is, if you want to buy a copy of this game, if you want to physically get this game, you could be spending a couple $100.
And see that right there, that's what's so important, because to have the ability to get a game that's so expensive and not actually spend that much money is a big deal in my mind, I think.
Now, what I love about what I'm hearing from this mini console is that the games that are going to be on this, it might not be every game, but with some games, you're going to be able to choose from multiple regions. Now, with Castlevania Bloodlines, that's a big deal because the regional differences are quite different. So what they got in the UK, for example, like the intro screen for Bloodlines in North America, there's blood.
What? There's no blood.
There's no blood in the UK. In the UK version, it's not. It's not called.
I was gonna say.
It's not called.
The game's about vampires. There better be blood in it.
No, it's not called Bloodlines. Okay, it's called The New Generation, and it's water that kind of bubbles up in the beginning of theirs. So you'll be able to choose, you know, from whatever region you want. Again, we don't know if it's across every single title that's going to be on the mini console, but select titles at least. So after Castlevania, we also have Echo the Dolphin. Big fan of Echo the Dolphin.
Yeah, it's a fun little game about a dolphin. I like it. It's fine. It was so cool when I was a kid to play it, but it's not one of those games that I go back and go, oh boy, I can't wait to poke a whole bunch of jellyfish with my nose again. But it's neat. It's a very important game for its time period.
Yes.
I think most people would argue that the Sega CD version is the one that own on that.
The Sega CD version has a soundtrack that I believe it's worth getting the Sega CD version for. We also have Space Harrier 2.
Nope. That's not okay.
Shane's out.
Okay. Space Harrier 2, it's not one. Space Harrier 1 is the game that people actually like. Space Harrier 2 is the game you got on Genesis because you couldn't get Space Harrier 1. The first time in my mind that we actually got a good version of Space Harrier was the very first time we got the 32X release. 32X version of Space Harrier is fantastic. It's almost exactly what you got in the arcades, although I think there's an options menu in that one which you didn't get in the arcade release because, well, why would you want options on that? Now, Space Harrier 2 is slow, bad frame rate.
Oh my gosh, it is jittery.
Yeah.
That's problematic.
There's some neat aspects to it. It's not the exact same game, but I don't know why that's here. That's not, I don't know anyone out there who was like, ooh, a Sega Genesis Mini, Streets of Rage, right? Echo the Dolphin, sorta. Sonic the Hedgehog, okay? Space Harrier 2, like that doesn't exist. That person is not a real person.
Yeah. Well, you said Streets of Rage. We don't know that Streets of Rage is coming to this yet.
Yeah, actually, we hope.
But Yuzo Koshiro is doing the sounds and stuff. I have a sneaking suspicion that we may see a couple of those titles.
Do you think he's going to do the main menu music for the Sega? Like when you're picking the game, you're going to hear some really pumping 1990 soundtrack?
He could be playing the spoons on his knee in an alley, and I would be riveted.
Yes, actually, so same. He's really good at music, folks. If you haven't been able to pick that from us right now.
Okay, so after Space Harrier, they also announced Shining Force.
Yep,
which is great.
Not a dull game.
Okay, so Shining Force is cool. Shining Force 2, I think, is a little bit better. I would love to see. We're going to talk a little bit more about this later. Shining Force CD. Shining Force is the strategy RPG title, kind of like. It was Fire Emblem before we really had Fire Emblem here in North America, and it's still wonderful, all those titles to this day. After that, we have Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine.
Otherwise known as Puyo Puyo. Now, Mean Bean Machine kind of stands on its own. There's like a little, not really a narrative. There sort of is a narrative, but... Yeah, it's a pretty good game. I still have a lot of fun with it. Some traditionalists out there that really like Puyo Puyo tend to lean more towards that release of the game and its franchise because it's very by the book kind of thing. There's little rule sets in that really play with you while you're going around the game, and it's a really fun experience. And I think it's still something that a lot of people could enjoy going back and playing it again.
Yeah, I think it's the first Puyo Puyo that Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine is, because the second one was also released on the Mega Drive in Japan, and actually we're gonna have to talk about that soon because we'll talk about their list right after this. Next up's Toe Jam and Earl.
So. We played the remaster recently, and I went back and played the original again a little.
Yeah,
I'm not a fan. It doesn't really work for me. Look, for what it was doing at its time, nothing like that.
In a bubble, Toe Jam and Earl was a very important game because it did have like randomization factors to it that we hadn't really seen in console games, especially in the 16-bit generation. It was pretty wild. Had some roguelike stuff going on before people were talking about roguelike games. I feel like it's important as far as like a historical piece on this little mini machine. It makes sense to me.
Yes.
Yeah. Space Harrier 2, not so much.
But what's next?
Next is a game that came with the CD that I played all the time in my CD player. It's called Comic Zone.
This is so important. Now let me make this clear. The image you're seeing down there, I don't even know where it is. Right there.
You go like
that
this.
image. Yeah, okay. That image right there, that one, if you look really close, you'll notice that it says bonus CD, and I'm wondering if we're actually going to get the original bonus CD and all of its tracks in the Sega Genesis Mini, because why else would you show that box art?
So I'm hoping that because M2 is involved, and we've seen that they've been like pretty kind to their titles and not scared to dabble a little bit with some experimental stuff. Yeah, maybe you will be able to. Maybe you can bring it into the game and listen to the CD soundtrack while you're playing Comic Zone on your Genesis Mini.
That'd be so cool. For those of you out there that have never actually played Comic Zone, I don't know what to tell you. It's one of the most visually impressive games you'll ever find on the Sega Genesis. And in fact, it feels like that middle ground between the next generation of consoles and the previous one. Like, it's doing things that you don't see on typical Genesis games. Lots of interesting animation and framework. The levels are set up in a way that makes visual sense. And if there's like a secret area that you missed, you know you missed it because it's a frame of a comic page, and you know if you can walk by it and see it and you can't get in there, that there was some way to trigger an instance to get in there.
I really love the way that it kind of plays with the medium of comics as well. You're jumping between frames, you can rip pages and make them into airplanes and throw them, and your little rat buddy can rip pages and find goodies for you as well. It's a game that, like, it holds up very much stylistically, but for people that are just jumping into it nowadays, we played it just a few days ago. We're like, well, if we didn't know how this works here, this would be very frustrating.
Unfortunately, that's how that is. Yeah, but it's one of those games that it's a lot of trial and error. However, I believe it is so important to have this in the collection because it's one that if you're not familiar with, you really should have tried.
Okay, next up is Sonic the Hedgehog Uno.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense that you'd see one of the Sonic games on this. Surprised that we didn't hear the Sonic games, all of them just announced right away. But there are some kind of
caveats that we've seen in the past with these releases.
Now, Adam and I are both thinking we're going to see Sonic the Hedgehog 2, but we're not too certain if we're going to see Sonic the Hedgehog 3 because there might be licensing and rights issues. Now, for those of you that don't know, it's always been rumored, but Michael Jackson may or may not have been involved with the music in Sonic the Hedgehog 3.
No one's talking about him nowadays.
Not anyone. So if it comes into fruition that we don't get Sonic the Hedgehog 3, that's likely the reason. However, if Sega really wanted to, they could use the release that they had on PC that removed all the Michael Jackson soundtracks, supposed, alleged Michael Jackson soundtracks, but some of those songs that you hear in Sonic 3 are so iconic to the game that I would argue if you're trying to get that same experience, losing those tracks really suck. Knuckles' song, like as soon as you see him at the very beginning of the game, Ice Cap Zone is unbelievably iconic, and Launch Base. I mean, those songs matter so much to what that game is. To take them out, you might lose a piece of its soul if you do that.
Yeah, I really do wonder whether or not that's going to be included, because as far as I remember, in the Sega Genesis Classics collection, which it was a disc that came out, it's on everything now. I don't believe it had the third Sonic game on there.
No, typically whenever I see any kind of collection from Sega, they usually forget Sonic 3 altogether.
So super quick, one more game that I'm like totally psyched about.
This one's pretty cool.
Gunstar Heroes. Treasure makes great games. Treasure makes great shooting games. Gunstar Heroes is a classic. It holds up. Probably better than most of the titles we read off. It is brilliant.
Look, if you're, I'm saying this even with Sonic the Hedgehog 1 on the list, if you're going to play one game on all the things they just said here, Gunstar Heroes is the game to play. That one is amazing. The moment you start up the game, and it's not typically you see this, you remember back when we were kids and the Konami logo would come up and you're like, this is a sign of quality, you know, like that sound? Well, with Gunstar Heroes, when you see the Treasure logo, it's in full 3D. And when I was a kid, I was like, like I was like, oh my god, how did you do that?
What is this sorcery?
Right? And that's the kind of stuff that you get with Gunstar Heroes. It's not just the 3D intro, but it's smooth, liquid smooth gameplay, fantastic graphics, and lots of things going on at the screen at any given moment.
Well, what's really important about that game that I love is that every level switches things up. It introduces new sort of things. Maybe you're in a machine where you can jump on the ceiling and below, and like they just keep mixing things up. You know, they teach you a thing, and then they're like, forget about that. This other thing's kind of cool too.
Now, in the Japanese release of the Sega Genesis Mini, known as the Mega Drive Mini over there, we're going to be getting different games.
Yes. So I'm going to try my darndest to say the first one, because we didn't get this in North America.
I'm going to try this too after you're done.
Mado Monogatari.
Mado Monogatari. I can't. I can't do it.
I think that was pretty good. So this is a super cute first-person dungeon crawling game. if it was translated, I would probably enjoy checking it out.
Yeah,
It's a long-running
unfortunately.
series as well. It's a series.
See, that's one of the problems with the games like this. If they're not translated, not much you can do. Now, I would argue that if there are any fan translations out there, Sega probably should work to kind of get that stuff in there, but you know, we don't know that for sure. Yeah. Now, the next game, though.
Oh, I can pronounce this. I can pronounce this.
Yeah, can you?
Okay, Puyo Puyo 2.
Yeah.
Do you know why it's called Puyo Puyo 2?
Because it's 2.
2. It's number 2.
It's number 2. Yeah. Now, look, Puyo Puyo, I'm such a big fan of the franchise. I like Puyo Puyo 2 quite a bit. I've played it a bunch of times. Seeing it on this collection is important. I think it's one of the best. I would love to see this. Because, look, you can play that game without understanding Japanese. I can play it without understanding Japanese, and I would love to see them release that on the North American release as well, because it's just one that we don't really get to play that much in North America.
The next title I'm not very familiar with, actually. It's called Rent-A-Hero. All I know is people are just like, just play it.
Yeah.
It's good. It's really good. A lot of people wanted it to come to the North American version of the Mini as well.
Yeah, it's a good fighting game, pretty much. Not like fighting brawler. Yeah.
Okay. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is the next one, and that's why Shane and I were kind of assuming that we'd maybe be getting Sonic the Hedgehog 2 in the West as well.
I'm not going to insult Sonic the Hedgehog, but Sonic the Hedgehog 1 is not as good as Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Where Sonic the Hedgehog 1 is just coming up with the ideas to what would make a Sonic game work, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is like, okay, we figured it out, and they got it. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is just a much stronger, better playing game with a lot more interesting things going on just all over. I mean, you've got Casino Night Zone. We don't get that in the first one. That's why 2's better.
Okay. Next up, we have Wrestle Ball, which is an over-the-top, or like, it is a sports game.
It's a sports game.
It looks fun.
Might as well just call it sports ball.
I'm all right with it not coming to.
It's cool. I'm not against it. I'm not against it. It's just, it is what it is. I don't think it's a bad idea for a game. It's just not something that I'm particularly interested in.
Right.
But if it comes on top of all the other games they've already established, so much the better. Now, there is one thing we heard about, that originally they were only looking to release 30 games on this console, and they were like, oh, we can't pare it down. We have to put on 40. Cool. More. Just come on, just keep throwing games on there. It doesn't matter. Just put as many as you can.
Here's kind of an issue, and we're talking about more, and we spoke about the Sega Genesis Classic collection already. That was a title that was released and has a bunch of great Sega Genesis games. It has 50 plus titles.
That's right.
And the bulk of what we're seeing in the North American version of this mini console is already in that disc, and we can play that right now. It is a great collection of games. So I'm really hoping that whatever this device does, whatever M2's doing with the emulation of these games, they need to do a little something else. We need some little twists here or there. So do you want to maybe talk about some of the little twists that they could possibly bring to this that would, want you buying it?
Okay. To make me want to buy this thing. Now, Adam and I are in a very specific position where we already own many of these games. We own other systems that run these games. For M2 to really throw it out there and make it impressive, I would love to see 4K resolution. We're probably not going to see that, but with these older video games, 4K is a perfect scale. Like basically, when you play an older game from that era on a 4K television, what you get, on a 1080p television, you kind of get like a limited scope. Like they have to kind of box the image in because otherwise it doesn't match up completely with the pixels. Yes. But 4K is a perfect upscale, so you can get a full screen, beautiful looking image, and that's kind of what I want to see from them. I'd love to see the ability to have save states, rewind functionality, things we saw in that classic collection already, right?
Yeah, right. Or things that we've seen already in other, like the Nintendo mini consoles that they've released. They kind of set the bar there. So I'm hoping that they can push a little bit beyond that. Yeah, smoothing options and stuff. I don't use them, but like have everything there so people can dabble with them. What I would love to see, and now that we're talking about like
scan lines.
Scan lines.
That's important. Because it's important for people out there that want that look. Scan lines. Can't stress that enough.
And being able to like adjust the thickness of the scan lines and whatnot.
I want it like thick. Right?
So they announced that they were first going to do 30 games, and they were like, no, we can make it 40. A part of me, this is like, I'm grabbing for nothing at this point because I have no evidence of this really. A part of me is hoping that they're like, we can do Sega CD on here. They're like 10 more games.
And 32X.
32X?
Look, the 32X, lived a brave and short life, and there were there was some not so great games on there, but there are some ones that are worth playing. The Sega CD has a far better library, but I also want to keep this in mind when it comes to certain games that are being released on the system, like let's say Altered Beast, okay? Altered Beast is a pretty good Genesis game.
Yeah.
It is better in arcades. And if we had the ability to switch between the Genesis version and the arcade version, that would be really, really cool. I would personally like that.
We got better sprite scaling and stuff with the arcade version, yeah.
Yeah, like when you punch the enemies and you blow them up, the actual, like the pieces, everything just flies at the screen. That doesn't happen in the Genesis release, unfortunately.
So here's the thing. I was talking about Sega CD. M2 has a very good relationship with Konami.
It's gonna break my heart here.
Because M2 has they've worked with Konami quite a bit. A lot of people love the WiiWare Rebirth series.
Just say it. Just say it. I know you want to say it. Just say it.
Okay, so like they got Bloodlines
Yeah.
for the console. What about Snatcher?
Yeah, yeah.
What
that's
if
right.
what if they're finally like
That's it.
oh,
That's what it is, isn't it? That's
okay,
what the conversation is.
What would make everyone talk about this little device, even though there's already like a bunch of compilations of Genesis games? What would make all the freaking headlines for this thing, man?
I want Snatcher on the Genesis Mini. Of course I want this Sega Genesis Mini to have Snatcher, but the idea that that's going to happen, it's just insane. Look, I don't think everything has cooled yet with what happened with Kojima and Konami all that way back.
Yeah.
If Konami were to re-release Snatcher, it would be a big freaking deal, like a massive thing. The idea that this once incredibly expensive, hard to find Sega CD game on incredibly hard to find Sega CD hardware and getting that to run on your monitor TV, if they could surpass all of that by releasing that game on that system, it would be a game changer. A whole bunch of people would be reintroduced to Snatcher, and the people out there that really fall in love with that game would demand a sequel, and something might happen. Fireworks, who knows? But I don't think that Konami is willing to go that route.
Yeah, I know. It's just a pie in the sky thing. If not, hey, you still have Sega CD on there. Give us the Lunar games.
Yeah.
Give us Vey. Give us Flink.
Sonic CD.
Yeah, dude. Terminator.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all good. Okay. I want to jump back to the hardware super duper quick. We know that this is coming out September 19th worldwide in Japan, Europe, and North America. The Japanese version is going to come in 2 SKUs. One has 1 controller and one has 2 controllers. The 1 controller is $60, 2 controllers $80. It has a 6-button controller.
Yeah.
The North American version has a 3-button controller. I don't know why this. Well, I can assume why this is a thing, because maybe the 6-button controller didn't sell as well or was not as prominent within the Genesis's life cycle here in North America. So they're like, this is how they classically remember how to play Genesis games. I was one of the people that had a 6-button controller for like Street Fighter and Comic Zone.
I gotta say this. I'm one of the people that grew up with a Sega Genesis Model 2 with 2 3-button controllers. I do not want the 3-button controller on this Genesis Mini.
Yeah.
That should not be happening. The 3-button controller was good for its time, but the 6-button controller surpassed everything. It is a far better built, far better controller in general. I agree. So I don't believe that the 3-button needs to be there. And it's not just the fact that there's 3 buttons over 6, it's that the way it's designed is way too big. It feels awkward in the hands compared to the 6-button. The 6-button is a much more refined style, a better weapon for better age. Something about it is just a smarter idea, and the 3-button, I think Sega believes the 3-button is more iconic than it actually is, but every other system that has been released recently, from AtGames to anyone else, they're always releasing the 6-button. They're not releasing the 3-button.
That is sad to think, like, AtGames released maybe a I don't want to say better controller, but a controller that more people wanted.
It's not a better controller.
No, we felt those controllers.
You don't even know. We're doing a worst ever on Sega, and AtGames, that's happening. It's going to happen.
We can't say any more about that.
Retrobit sent us a box of their brand new controllers that are just like, here's what gets me. They're licensed Sega controllers. Sega and them had a handshake agreement and said, make new ones, and they're not using them.
And
Sega,
they're really good too.
Oh, if you're watching right now, please just knock at Retrobit's door, hat in hand, and go, we want to use your controllers that we licensed with you for our system, because it's already there. It's perfect.
We do know that the controllers that are going to be bundled with these things are USB, so we're kind of really hoping that we can use other sort of USB controllers that have the 6-button sort of dealio to play the console with.
Yeah.
So, are there any other games you want to see pop up on this list before we wrap things up?
Well, I mean, when it comes to Sega CD, like, okay, Genesis, there's a whole bunch of games. One of my favorite games ever on the Sega Genesis, one that not a lot of people talk about, is called Decap Attack. You're a big fan. I'm a big fan. Decap Attack had a Japanese version that was completely different than the one in North America. Having both of those versions side by side would be amazing to be able to experience that.
If Rocket Knight Adventure is not on in this box,
it's a pretty good game.
After they got Bloodlines, I will, dude. If they put Sparkster on there, the sequel instead of Rocket Knight Adventures, Pitchfork, man.
Yeah, I can see that.
Pitchfork.
I mean, there's a number of games. You're a big fan of the Monster Hunter World. Monster World.
Yeah, you were mentioning before fan translations. There's a ton of translations of Monster World 4. There's an official one, I believe, as well that was released on like you can get it on the Wii Virtual Console and stuff. Yeah. Get Monster World 4 on this thing. People in North America need to play this, man. Connection to Konami. We already got Bloodlines. Get us Rocket Knight Adventure. Contra Hardcore.
Yep.
Dude.
If we could get Capcom, I'm just saying, once upon a time, there was a Mega Man game that was supposed to be released on the Sega Genesis called Mega Man Wily Wars. I'm not saying we need it, but it was only ever released officially I think in Brazil once, but officially it was on the Sega Channel. And the Sega Channel was like a streaming service from years back, and there was that version on there. If we could get that on the system, it would be amazing.
Hey.
It's a little bit more refined graphics and stuff like that. It's just something you don't see anywhere else.
You want to talk Sega Channel? We can talk Alien Soldier,
yes,
which is another treasure game that's really good. We can talk Pulse Man, which is a Game Freak game that not a lot of people have played. Hey,
sure,
the Pokemon people released a really great platformer on the Genesis, and no one played it. So, hey, man. Now's the time. 10 extra games. They're like, we have 30, 10 extra games, Sega CD, 32X, Pulse Man.
Yeah. Like, okay, for the Sega 32X games, I just want to see all the major arcade releases that they released on the 32X, just because I think it'd be fun, and they don't take up a lot of space. For Sega CD games, though, I get it. They take up a little bit more space, but you got to do Sonic CD if you're going to do it. And I want some weird ones. Panic. I think that's a fun game. It's bizarre, it's weird, but I think a lot of people will enjoy it. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, or we could get a weird FMV game as well.
Okay.
So shall we?
Well, we have one comment.
Oh,
before we go,
we're live.
Yeah.
So we can actually do a thing.
Yeah,
we can actually talk to the people that are chatting in our chat right now. We see you guys.
You probably thought this was pre-recorded. It's not. This is live.
If you saw the intro, you knew it. It wasn't.
Yeah. All right.
So yeah, because people weren't sure it was live. There's not so much questions. The only question really was why live? Question mark.
Why live?
Why live?
Okay. So we wanted. So when we started the show on Hot Take, we were basically just like, okay, we turn on the camera and we talk. And we don't edit things. We don't have to do any of that stuff.
There's been a couple moments.
Oh yeah,
like,
sometimes
like,
we mess up. But like the idea was that we could do this live, and we thought it'd be more fun to share this with you and do this like this.
Do it in the moment. And it's like, I don't know. There's something cool about no. You have one chance to do this. Don't mess it up. I like that.
Yeah, I already peed myself, but you guys can't tell.
Yeah, there's a smell.
See, perfect. It's like this is what we really want to do, is just to share it with you guys and have fun with this, because it's one of those things that YouTube gives us the opportunity to do this. And when we do these videos before, there's a lot of time that goes into it just processing to go up. So now we can just get it to you right away. Yep. So if some news is happening or something and you want to hear our opinions about it, we can just walk here and talk to you, and then this can go up. And hopefully you guys like this, because you still get editing, you still got like images that were happening down there.
We have someone else that is very, very awesome that's helping us out.
Everyone say hi to Robin.
Hi, Robin.
There you go.
All right. So you want to wrap it up?
Yeah.
There's two more things.
Two more things.
Sure.
Okay.
Just little things.
Okay.
Another was just something I thought was nice. I'm kind of paraphrasing. You are just as good live. You should stream more often.
Okay,
And
we will stream more
established that
often.
You're going to stream more often.
Yes.
But I just thought that was a nice comment from Shiny Big Boo.
Shiny Big Boo.
Shiny Big Boo.
We dig it.
And then just something that I've a someone is under the impression the cartridge slot opens on the Mini Genesis. That
wasn't. I believe that they were talking about that when. Maybe we should say the question one more time, just in case people didn't hear. So Robin was reading a question from someone that was saying that they were under the impression that there would be a cartridge slot on the Genesis Mini that you could actually use with your carts. I'm not sure. I don't believe that we're capable of doing. Can you bring up the picture of the comparison shot, Robin?
Yeah. Robin, pull up the picture.
See, we can do this too live, which is great. We can figure this out right now.
There we go.
There we go. Does that look like you can fit a cartridge in it? No.
Jeez, dude.
I'm sorry. No. But
they also said, what about a Mini 32X?
A Mini 32X.
I would buy it.
I would buy a Mini, but they don't need to do that. Look. The complexities of emulating 32X.
I didn't mean to sound so mean.
Does it look like you can fit a cartridge in there? Jeez. But look. Okay, the obviously it's gonna be. They're gonna have to make whole new carts, but I don't think they're gonna do it.
Tiny carts.
I don't think they're gonna do it.
Tiny CDs of Snatcher. Mini disc player.
I don't think they're going to do that. There's a reason why I believe they wouldn't do it personally, because the Mini Genesis by itself, to put in the components required to read a cartridge and everything, you're gonna have emulation issues. You're gonna have system on a chip problems. Then you're also gonna have to add cost to that, and I don't think we need that cost. Nintendo proved that people like to go out and get their systems without having the ability to add extra games. Though I would love to see that stuff, I just don't think you're gonna see it that way.
Hey Shane, how about historical proof? They tried releasing a peripheral for the Genesis back in the day called the 32X, and no one bought it.
I was there. Do you remember? I remember everyone being so excited for like a minute that they were going to be able to make their system look better, and then like what, 10 games came out?
It's still cool. Anyway,
it's still cool.
We should wrap it up. All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this, our first live escapade. We hope you enjoyed it.
And folks, if there are any games that you would like to see on the Sega Genesis Mini, let us know what they are in the comments, because we definitely want to see what's going to be happening. And look, in the next little bit, Sega is going to be announcing even more games for this thing. We know that they have a couple more to go, and there might be some surprises. Or we might just get Echo Jr., but there's a chance we get more than that.
Okay.
Hopefully.